The accident, the research ship Aurora floated like a small shadow in the endless black of space. Inside, 5 humans worked quietly. They were not soldiers. They were not explorers of fame. They were scientists, engineers, and dreamers testing a new engine. The jump drive was their creation, a machine that promised to move faster than light, to open doors across the stars. Captain Harris, a calm man with gray eyes, stood at the front of the bridge. "Are we ready?" he asked. His voice was steady, though everyone knew the risks. Dr. Elena Carter, the lead scientist, checked her screens. "Power stable, jump drive aligned, all systems ready." "Good," Harris said. He smiled faintly. "Then let's make history." The ship trembled as the engine roared to life. Lights flickered, space outside twisted, as if reality itself was bending. The crew held their breath. Then, suddenly, the stars disappeared. For 3 long seconds, there was nothing. Only silence, as though the universe had swallowed them whole. Then the stars returned, but they were not the same. Instead of the familiar map of Earth's neighborhood, a new sky filled the windows. Strange suns burned red and gold. A massive gas giant glowed in the distance with alien moons spinning around it. "We did it," Elena whispered. Her hands shook with excitement. "We jumped light years away." But her joy faded when alarms began to ring. Lieutenant Vega, the navigator, shouted, "Multiple signals, closing fast." On the screen, shapes appeared. At first they looked like shadows, but soon they grew clearer. Ships, dozens of them, sleek, dark, sharp like knives. They surrounded the Aurora in seconds, cutting off every escape path. The crew stared in silence. "Who are they?" Harris asked quietly. I don't know," Vega replied. "These aren't any designs we know. Not human, not even close." The alien fleet spread out like a steel net. Their weapons glowed faintly, humming with power. The humans knew one shot could tear their small ship apart. A voice cut through the static of the comms. It was deep, cold, and carried authority. "Unknown vessel, you have entered restricted space. Identify yourselves, or be destroyed." The humans exchanged glances. "Doctor," Carter's lips trembled. "Captain, this is first contact." But Harris did not panic. His voice stayed calm. "Open channel, put me through." When the line connected, Harris spoke in a steady tone. "This is Captain Harris of the research ship Aurora, representing Earth and the human race. We come in peace." There was silence. Then alien laughter, sharp and metallic, echoed through the speakers. "Earth? Human? Irrelevant. You have entered the territory of the Galactic Empire. You are trespassers." The crew felt the weight of the words. Galactic Empire. The name alone carried power. An empire that ruled the stars. An empire that already had fleets, weapons, and control. Compared to them, humanity was nothing but a newborn child. Dr. Carter whispered, "They'll destroy us." But Harris only leaned back in his chair. "We'll see." On the main screen, one of the alien ships moved closer. It was massive, like a floating city of metal with glowing engines at its back and weapons lining its surface. A hangar bay opened, and a smaller craft detached, flying straight toward the Aurora. The humans braced themselves. Some expected death. Others expected capture. But no one begged. No one cried. The alien shuttle locked on and connected to the airlock. Metal clanged against metal. The hiss of pressure filled the hallways. The humans gathered near the airlock, waiting. The door opened. Out stepped an alien commander. His skin was pale silver, his eyes like burning coals. He wore armor that shimmered with strange energy, and his movements were sharp, precise. Behind him, guards with weapons followed. He looked at the humans with disdain, as if staring at insects. "You should be afraid," he said, his voice echoing, through a translator. "You stand before the Empire." But Captain Harris did not flinch. He folded his arms, looked the alien straight in the eyes, and said in a calm voice, "Welcome aboard. Coffee?" The room went silent. The guards shifted uneasily. The alien commander blinked, confused. He had expected fear, maybe tears, maybe surrender. But not this. Not humans offering hospitality in the face of death. Dr. Carter almost laughed, though her heart was racing. Vega smirked nervously. Even the engineers in the back straightened as if remembering who they were. The alien commander frowned. "You dare mock the Empire?" Harris shook his head. "No, I simply don't see a reason to be afraid. You're just people with ships. We've dealt with worse back home." The alien's eyes narrowed. "Worse? What could be worse than us?" Harris didn't answer. He only smiled, calm as the deep sea. For the first time in centuries, the commander of an Empire boarding squad felt uncertain. These creatures, these humans, did not behave like the others. Every species that had met the Empire had knelt, begged, or screamed. But not them. They stood tall. They looked him in the eye. They treated him not as a master, but as an equal, and that was more dangerous than any weapon. The commander turned, slowly, to his guards. "Take them to the flagship," he ordered. "The High Council will want to see these humans." The guards moved forward. The humans did not resist. They followed with steady steps, their faces calm, their eyes sharp. The Aurora had jumped into the heart of an empire that ruled galaxies. Any other species would have fallen on their knees. But humans did not flinch, and that was the beginning of everything. First contact. The alien commander led the humans into his shuttle. The guards kept their weapons raised, but the humans walked. Calmly, almost too calmly. No chains, no struggle, no fear. Just quiet footsteps against the metal floor. Inside the shuttle, strange blue lights pulsed along the walls. The air smelled faintly of iron and something sweet like burning fruit. The crew of the Aurora exchanged curious glances but said nothing. Captain Harris sat down in one of the cold, alien chairs as if he were sitting in his own living room. Dr. Carter followed, pulling a small scanner from her pocket, quietly recording everything. Lieutenant Vega leaned back and whispered, "Feels like a theme park ride." The alien commander's jaw tightened. These humans did not act like prisoners. They did not tremble or whisper in fear. They acted as though they were guests. Minutes later, the shuttle docked inside the massive flagship of the Empire. The humans stepped out into a hangar so large it could have swallowed a city block. Hundreds of soldiers stood in formation. Ships hovered above, engines glowing. Strange banners hung from the walls, marked with symbols that spoke of conquest and power. Most species would have dropped to their knees at the sight, but the humans simply looked around, studying everything with open curiosity. "Interesting design," Vega muttered. "Efficient use of vertical space." One of the alien guards snarled as if insulted, but Harris only nodded thoughtfully. "They built this for intimidation. Smart strategy." The alien commander led them through a series of tall doors until they entered a grand hall. At the far end sat a group of alien officers, their armor glowing with lines of energy. They sat like judges in a court, their faces cold and sharp. One of them leaned forward, his voice booming through the hall. "Humans of Earth, you stand before the Empire. Do you understand your situation?" Harris raised an eyebrow. "Yes. You captured us after we arrived by accident. We didn't come here to start trouble." The aliens exchanged glances. The humans' tone carried no fear, only steady calm. The officer's eyes narrowed. "You have violated our borders. The punishment is usually execution." Dr. Carter's heart jumped, but before she could speak, Harris leaned back in his chair. "Then why haven't you executed us yet?" The hall went silent. The alien commander clenched his fists, glaring at Harris, but the officers remained still. One finally said, "Because you are different." "Different how?" Harris asked. "You do not kneel," the officer replied. "Every race we have conquered trembles before us. But you offer us drinks and questions." At this, Vega grinned. "Well, if you want drinks, we've got coffee back on the ship. Best in the galaxy, if you ask me, a few guards murmured, confused by the word. Coffee? These creatures joked while standing on the edge of death? Dr. Carter leaned forward, her voice calm but firm. We didn't come here to kneel. We came here to explore. If our ship entered your territory, it was an accident. But make no mistake, humans don't scare easily. The alien officers studied them closely. Their species had crushed hundreds of civilizations. Entire worlds had begged for mercy. Yet, these humans spoke with steady voices, their eyes filled not with terror but with curiosity. Finally, one of the officers tapped the table. We will test you. A door opened. From the shadows came a creature, tall and armored, carrying a spear-like weapon. Its skin shimmered like glass, and its eyes glowed faint green. It was a gladiator, a soldier bred for combat. The officer said coldly, one of you will fight. If you survive, perhaps you are worth keeping alive. The humans looked at one another. Vega smirked. You want to fight? Why didn't you just say so? Dr. Carter shook her head. This is reckless. But Harris stood up slowly. No, it's necessary. They want to see what we're made of. He stepped forward, his boots echoing across the floor. I'll fight. The alien gladiator raised its weapon, muscles flexing. It towered over Harris, armored and bred for war. Harris wore only his simple captain's uniform. The crowd of aliens leaned forward, expecting the human to beg or falter. The duel began. The gladiator lunged forward with blinding speed, the spear striking like lightning. Harris moved aside at the last second, the spear slicing the air where his chest had been. He ducked, rolled, and grabbed a metal rod from the floor. Not a weapon, just a tool. But in his hands it became one. The aliens gasped. Humans adapted fast. The fight raged. The gladiator was stronger, faster, trained for years. But Harris was clever. He used the environment, the walls, the floor, even the gladiator's own weight to turn the battle. Strike after strike he evaded, countered, and improvised. Finally, with one swift move, Harris disarmed the gladiator and pinned it to the ground, the metal rod against its throat. The hall went silent. The alien officers stared, stunned. No outsider had ever beaten one of their champions without advanced weapons. But this human had done it with nothing but speed, wit, and courage. Harris stepped back, tossing the rod aside. We don't want war, he said, but don't think we can't handle ourselves. The officers whispered among themselves. Some were impressed, some were unsettled. The commander's jaw tightened. At last, the lead officer spoke. Very well. You may live, for now. But we will watch you closely. Humans may not be as simple as they appear. The guards escorted the crew out of the hall. As they walked, Dr. Carter whispered to Harris, You could have been killed. Harris smiled faintly. Or I could show them the truth. Vega chuckled. And the truth is we're not scared of their empire. The humans walked on, surrounded by enemies, yet carrying themselves like equals. And deep in the shadows of the flagship, whispers spread. Perhaps these humans are not just another race to conquer. Perhaps they are something more. Tsuikrida. Humans were placed in a large chamber aboard the alien flagship. The walls glowed faint blue, filled with shifting symbols that none of them could read. Guards lined the doors, weapons ready, their eyes never leaving the newcomers. Captain Harris stood at the center, hands folded behind his back. Dr. Carter's scanner hummed quietly in her hand, collecting data she pretended not to take. Lieutenant. Vega leaned against the wall, whistling softly, which only seemed to irritate the guards further. They're watching us, Carter whispered. Of course, Harris said. His voice was calm. The question is, what comes next? The answer arrived soon enough. The chamber doors opened with a heavy hiss. 3 high-ranking aliens entered, their armor brighter, their faces sharper than the guards. One spoke, his voice deep and commanding. Humans. The council has decided. You will be tested. Your fate depends on the results. Tested how? Harris asked. The alien gestured, and the walls of the chamber shifted. Panels slid open. Suddenly, holographic images filled the room. Giant ships, massive cities floating above alien worlds, weapons that glowed with enough power to split moons. "This is the Empire," the alien said proudly. "We show you what we are. Now show us what you are." The images shifted again. The chamber floor changed, becoming rough like stone. Strange creatures appeared, not real but holographic. Huge beasts with teeth like swords, their roars echoing through the room. Carter frowned. "A simulation." "Yes," the alien said. "Survive if you can." The beasts charged. The crew did not scream. They did not run. Instead, Vega smirked. Finally, some entertainment. He grabbed a broken piece of paneling from the floor, holding it like a blade. Harris barked an order. "Form up. Carter, stay behind me. Vega, flank. Left. Use angles." The holographic beasts attacked, their claws slashing, their teeth snapping. The humans moved with surprising precision. Harris struck first, slamming a beast in the jaw with a piece of metal piping. Vega rolled under another, stabbing upward with his makeshift weapon. Carter, though untrained, used her scanner to send bursts of light into the creature's eyes, blinding them just long enough for Harris to land another strike. The aliens watching from the balcony leaned forward. Their expression shifted from arrogance to curiosity. "These are only projections," one whispered. "They should react with fear, not strategy." Within minutes, the humans had adapted. They worked together, covering each other, using whatever scraps they found as weapons. The beasts fell one by one, dissolving into streams of light until none remained. The chamber returned to its original state. Harris stood tall, breathing hard but steady. "Is that all?" he asked. The alien leader's eyes narrowed. "Not yet." The floor shifted again. This time the humans found themselves standing in a simulation of a starship's control room. Alarms blared. A massive asteroid field appeared on the screens, and the simulated ship hurtled forward, seconds from destruction. "Navigate this," the alien said. "Prove your worth." Vega leapt into the pilot's chair, hands flying across the strange. "Controls. Not built for humans," he muttered, "but I'll manage." The simulated ship rocked violently as asteroids slammed around it. Vega steered hard left, then dipped under a massive spinning rock. Harris called out warnings, guiding him. Carter quickly translated symbols on the alien display, feeding information to Vega. The watchers above whispered again. How do they adapt so quickly? The ship scraped past a massive asteroid, spinning dangerously close to destruction. But Vega grinned as he twisted the controls. Not today. With a final surge, the simulated ship shot through the asteroid field, engines blazing, and broke into clear space. The alarm shut off. The simulation ended. The chamber returned to silence. The lead alien stepped forward slowly. His expression was unreadable. Impressive. No species has ever survived both tests on their first encounter. Carter tilted her head. Then why test us? The alien studied her carefully. Because fear tells us everything. And you? Do not fear us. Harris stepped closer, his voice calm but sharp. Fear is a choice. We choose not to make it. The alien's jaw tightened. For centuries, the Empire had ruled through terror, but these humans, these fragile creatures of flesh and bone, did not kneel. They adapted. They fought. They survived. Another officer leaned close to the leader and whispered, If they are this resourceful now, what will they become in time? The leader said nothing, but the unease in his eyes betrayed his thoughts. Harris turned to his crew. We're done here. The humans walked out of the chamber, heads high, while the aliens stared after them. Whispers followed in the corridors of the flagship. They survived the beasts. They passed the navigation trial. They did not bend. The Empire had seen hundreds of species come and go. All of them had bent the knee. All of them had shown fear. But The humans had faced the test and smiled. For the first time in centuries, the Empire wondered if it had not discovered prey, but rivals. And deep in the heart of the flagship, the Council made a decision. The humans must be watched. For if they cannot be broken, they may one day change the galaxy itself. The warning: the humans were no longer treated like prisoners. They were given quarters aboard the flagship, still guarded, of course, but less like captives and more like curiosities. Word had spread across the Empire's fleet. The newcomers had passed the tests. They had not broken. They had not begged. Inside their quarters, Captain Harris sat at a sleek alien table, its surface glowing faintly with shifting symbols. Dr. Carter moved from wall to wall, scanning every panel with her device, recording all she could. Vega lay on one of the strange rigid beds, hands behind his head, whistling softly. "They don't know what to make of us," Carter whispered. "Good," Harris replied. "The longer they hesitate, the more we learn." But their calm was interrupted by a sudden tremor. The entire flagship shook. The lights dimmed, alarms blared in a strange alien tone. Vega sat up quickly. That didn't sound like routine drills. The guards at the door suddenly shouted into comms, their voices sharp, almost panicked. Through the walls, the humans heard words from the translator system. Enemy fleet detected. Rival forces approaching. Harris narrowed his eyes. Rival forces? The daughter opened, and the alien commander from before entered. His face was tight, his voice clipped. "Stay here, do not move." "Who's attacking you?" Harris asked calmly. The commander glared but finally answered. "The Zorath, another empire. They have long challenged our borders." Vega smirked. "So the bullies are getting bullied." The commander ignored the remark, but his tone betrayed unease. "Do not interfere. This is not your concern." He turned to leave, but Harris's voice stopped him. "If they board this ship, it is our concern." The commander gave no reply. The doors sealed again, leaving the humans in silence, except for the rumble of distant explosions outside the hull. Carter frowned. "If this ship falls, we fall with it." "Exactly," Harris said. "Which means we don't sit idle." Minutes later, the alarms grew louder. The humans felt the impact of enemy fire shaking the corridors. The guards outside their quarters rushed away, leaving their post. Harris stood. "Let's move." The crew slipped into the corridor. Smoke drifted from the ceiling. Lights flickered, and alien soldiers sprinted past, shouting orders. The humans followed the sound of chaos until they reached a wide observation deck. Through the massive glass window, the battle unfolded. The Empire's fleet fought in formation, their sleek ships firing bright lances of energy. But the enemy, the Zorath, were different. Their vessels looked jagged, almost organic, like massive claws tearing through space. Their weapons ripped through shields with brutal efficiency. Vega let out a low whistle. "They don't play around." The flagship shuddered as a Zorath ship rammed one of the escorts. Fire spilled across the stars. Dr. Carter bit her lip. "If this continues, the flagship might be boarded." "Not might," Harris said, pointing. "Look." Across the hangar bay below, blackened pods smashed into the walls. Zorath warriors spilled out, hulking insect-like creatures with armored shells and bladed arms. Their screeches echoed through the metal halls. Empire soldiers rushed to meet them, weapons blazing. The battle turned brutal in seconds. Then, almost unnoticed, one of the pods slammed into the deck near the humans' corridor. The wall tore open, and Zorath warriors crawled inside, screeching. Harris grabbed a fallen alien weapon from the floor. "Here we go." The first warrior lunged. Harris fired, the strange rifle blasting a bolt of energy into its chest. The beast screeched and fell. Vega swung a metal pipe he had snatched earlier, smashing another in the head. Carter, trembling but focused, used her scanner to overload a control panel, the blast of sparks stunning 2 Zorath at once. The humans fought fiercely, not with fear, but with raw determination. Their movements were not perfect, but they adapted, quickly, using whatever they had. Within minutes, the corridor was littered with the bodies of Zorath warriors. The humans stood, panting but steady, their eyes sharp. More Empire soldiers arrived, staring in shock at the scene. One whispered, "They fought the Zorath?" The commander appeared again, his eyes narrowing as he saw the fallen enemies. "You disobeyed my orders." Harris dropped the alien rifle at the commander's feet. "We survived. So did your corridor. You're welcome." The commander's jaw clenched. He wanted to reprimand them, but even he could not deny the truth. Without the humans, this section would have fallen. Dr. Carter crossed her arms. "Seems your empire isn't as invincible as you claimed." The commander's eyes flashed with anger. "The Zorath are a plague. They destroy everything they touch. They will not stop until all bow or die." "Sounds familiar," Vega muttered, under his breath. The commander ignored him, but his voice dropped lower. "Consider this your warning, humans. The galaxy is not kind. The Zorath are only one of many threats. You survived today because you were clever, but cleverness alone will not always save you." Harris held the commander's gaze. "Maybe not, but fear won't save us either." The commander looked at him for a long moment, then turned sharply, barking orders to his troops. The humans were escorted back to their quarters, but now every guard who looked at them carried something new in their eyes, not just suspicion, but respect. That night, as the flagship drifted away from the battlefield, Vega finally broke the silence. "So we're in the middle of an alien empire war zone. Any regrets?" Harris gave a faint smile. "Not yet, but now we know something important." Carter frowned. "What's that?" "That the empire isn't the only danger out here," Harris said. "And the galaxy doesn't know what to do with humans who don't flinch." The room fell quiet. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, hiding more rivals, more threats, and more tests to come. But the humans didn't tremble. They had faced the Empire. They had faced the Zorath, and they were still standing. The clash, the battle with the Zorath, did not end in a single day. The Empire's fleet pulled back, regrouping near a star system filled with asteroid belts and unstable moons. Here they prepared for the next wave. The flagship became a hive of activity. Soldiers running, ships docking, weapons being rearmed. The humans, however, were not locked away this time. Instead, they were given freedom to walk under supervision. The Empire wanted to watch them closely, to see how they behaved. Captain Harris used every moment. He studied the layout of the ship, memorized how soldiers trained, and even observed how the Empire's officers gave orders. Dr. Carter gathered data, noting the strengths and weaknesses of alien technology. Vega, on the other hand, joked his way into conversations with low-ranking soldiers, learning small things others might overlook. But everyone knew another attack was coming. The warning arrived sooner than expected. "Zorath fleet incoming." The alarms blared. "Prepare for engagement." The humans rushed to the observation deck following the crowd of soldiers. Beyond the glass, the stars lit up with flashes of fire. The Zorath came fast, their jagged ships cutting through the void like blades. Their weapons spat dark energy, ripping apart shields with brutal force. The Empire returned fire in perfect formation, their sleek vessels moving like dancers in a deadly performance. But even in their precision, there was fear. The Zorath fought like predators, wild and relentless. Then the flagship shook. A violent impact sent soldiers stumbling. "Boarding parties!" a voice cried out. Pods slammed into the hull, drilling through metal. The humans exchanged looks. Harris spoke calmly. "They'll breach here soon. We help, or we die with them." Vega grinned, grabbing a loose tool. Finally, some action. The corridor doors exploded inward as Zorath warriors poured through, screeching. Their armor gleamed like obsidian, their claws sharp as blades. Empire soldiers fired, but the creatures kept advancing, tearing through lines with terrifying speed. The humans moved instantly. Harris shouted commands. Carter overloaded a power conduit, spraying sparks across the corridor. Vega swung his improvised weapon, slamming it into a warrior's jaw. Harris picked up a fallen blaster and fired with careful precision, each shot hitting where it mattered. The alien soldiers, surprised, watched the humans fight. Not like prey, but like wolves. They worked together, adapting with every second. The commander appeared, leading his troops. He barked orders, and the humans fell into the formation as if they had been part of the Empire for years. Together, they pushed the Zorath back. But then the real danger arrived. The walls shook violently as a massive Zorath brute forced its way inside. Taller than 3 men, covered in thick spiked armor, it roared with a sound that rattled the bones. The Empire soldiers faltered, fear flashing in their eyes. The brute charged, smashing soldiers aside like toys. Weapons barely scratched its hide. Carter gasped. It's unstoppable. But Harris didn't hesitate. Not unstoppable, just big. Vega, flank right. Carter, blind it. The brute swung its claws, smashing walls, scattering soldiers. Carter pointed her scanner, sending out a blinding burst of light. The brute shrieked, stumbling for just a second. Vega darted around its side, slamming a metal rod into the gaps between its armor. Harris rolled beneath its legs, firing upward at exposed joints. The brute bellowed, staggering. The soldiers saw it bleed for the first time. Their fear shifted into hope. With renewed energy, the Empire troops fired, targeting the weak points the humans had revealed. Within minutes, the brute collapsed, crashing to the floor in a storm of sparks and smoke. The corridor fell silent, save for the ragged breathing of survivors. The alien commander stared at the humans, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. I fight like no other. Harris handed the blaster back to a nearby soldier. We fight to live. That's all. But the commander shook his head. No, I have seen many fight to live. They fight with fear. You fight with something else. He did not name it, but the soldiers around him whispered among themselves. Respect. Even relief filled their voices. The humans, without realizing it, had turned the tide. The Empire soldiers no longer looked at them as strange outsiders. They looked at them as warriors, but outside the glass the greater battle still raged. Empire ships burned. Zorath vessels pressed harder. The war was far from over. Later, in the strategy chamber, the high officers debated their next move. The humans were brought in, not as prisoners but as witnesses. One officer slammed his fist on the table. The Zorath will destroy us if we underestimate them. We need everything we can use. His eyes flicked toward Harris. Another officer sneered. They are only one ship of primitives. Why give them importance? But the commander who had fought beside them spoke firmly. Because they fight with no fear. And in war against the Zorath, that may be the sharpest weapon we have. The chamber grew quiet. Harris stood calmly, hands behind his back. We didn't ask for this war, but if you want our help, we won't run. Humans never run. The officers studied him, their glowing eyes narrowing. For the first time in the Empire's long history, outsiders had not begged for mercy. They had stood beside them in battle. And somewhere deep inside, the Council began to wonder if humanity was not just another race to conquer, but a force that could change the balance of the galaxy. The clash with the Zorath was not the end. It was only the beginning. The battle was over, but the scars of war lingered. Smoke still trailed from the Empire's ships as they regrouped in orbit around a dying star. The Zorath had been forced back, but not destroyed. The flagship itself carried deep wounds across its hull, as if space had clawed at its metal skin. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy. Soldiers limped through the corridors tending to wounds. Engineers worked frantically to repair shattered systems. And everywhere whispers spread, not of fear, but of the strange newcomers who had stood against the Zorath and lived. The humans. Captain Harris, Dr. Carter, and Lieutenant Vega were summoned to the council chamber. It was a vast room, lined with tall black pillars glowing faintly with streams of energy. At the center stood a circular table where the high officers of the Empire gathered. Their eyes glowed with cold light, their expressions sharp as blades. The humans entered without hesitation. They were unarmed, surrounded by guards, but their steps were steady. Harris walked first, his face calm. Carter followed, carrying her ever-present scanner. Vega trailed behind, hands in his pockets, whistling quietly until Harris shot him a look. The lead officer spoke, his voice booming through the chamber. Humans of Earth, you fought alongside our soldiers. You survived the Zorath. That is not insignificant. Another officer leaned forward. But your kind is reckless. You interfere where you are told not to. You act without order. Such behavior is dangerous. Vega smirked. Dangerous is relative. The guards tensed, but Harris raised a hand, silencing Vega before trouble could spark. Then he looked directly at the officers. You brought us here. You tested us. You forced us into your battles, and we survived. Not because we wanted to prove anything, but because survival is what we do best. Carter stepped forward, her voice quieter but firm. You think we are reckless. Maybe. But where we come from, danger is part of life. We've faced wars, disasters and threats we created ourselves. Fear never helped us, adaptation did, that's why we're still here. The officers studied them in silence. They were used to seeing conquered races tremble, beg, or rage. But these humans stood calmly in the presence of power, as if they belonged there. Finally, one officer turned to the others. The question is not what they have done. The question is what they could become. Murmurs filled the chamber. Some officers nodded in agreement. Others scowled. A harsh voice cut through the debate. It came from an older officer whose armor was darker than the rest. His eyes burned with suspicion. I say they are too dangerous. A race without fear will never submit. They should be destroyed before they grow. The chamber fell into silence. Humans did not flinch. Harris only folded his arms. If you believe destroying us will make you safe, you don't understand us at all. The officer slammed his hand on the table. You dare? But another voice interrupted. It was the commander who had fought alongside the humans in the corridors. His tone was calm, steady, but carried weight. I was there. I saw them fight. Without them, that section of the ship would have fallen. Without them, many of us would be dead. Destroying them would not be strength. It would be fear disguised as power. The chamber rippled with uneasy silence. The humans had earned more than survival. They had earned a defender inside the very council itself. The lead officer raised a hand, silencing the room. Enough. We will not decide in anger. The humans have proven themselves worthy of respect. But respect does not mean trust. For now, they live, and we will watch them closely. The decision hung in the air like a blade. Not an execution, not an alliance, something between. The humans were escorted back to their quarters, but this time the guards' eyes carried something new. No longer only suspicion. Now there was a trace of admiration, even quiet gratitude. Later that night, Carter sat by the viewport staring at the broken stars. They don't know what to do with us, she said softly. Harris stood beside her, hands clasped behind his back. That's the point. They've never faced anyone like us. To them, fear is control, but we don't give them that. Vega flopped onto the bed, grinning. So what you're saying is, we're messing with their heads. Carter shook her head, but she smiled faintly. It's more than that. We're rewriting the rules without even trying. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Outside, the fleet glimmered against the endless night, preparing for more war, more battles, more blood. The galaxy was vast and merciless. Empires rose and fell in fire. But somewhere inside that merciless galaxy, whispers spread. The humans do not kneel. The humans do not break. The humans are something new, and in the council chambers of the most powerful empire in known space, a seed had been planted. A seed of doubt, of fear, and perhaps of hope. Respect had been earned, but respect was only the beginning. The twist days passed aboard the flagship. The Empire's fleet recovered slowly. Scars of the battle against the Zorath still etched into their ships. Repairs continued, soldiers trained harder, and whispers about the humans grew louder. Some soldiers called them reckless. Others called them brave. But one word kept spreading. one that had rarely been spoken about outsiders before. Equal. The humans noticed the change. Guards no longer watched them with suspicion alone. Some even gave small nods of respect when they passed. Soldiers who once glared now asked quiet questions about Earth. Even in the mess halls, aliens paused to listen when Vega told stories of bar fights in New York, or storms that could rip houses apart. Still, the council remained divided. Respect had been earned, but fear remained. And fear in the Empire was never far from destruction. At last the humans were summoned again. The council chamber was darker this time. The glowing pillars dimmed, casting long shadows across the floor. The officers sat in silence, their glowing eyes locked on the three humans standing in the center. The lead officer spoke slowly, his voice heavy. Humans, you have shown courage. You have fought with skill. You have stood where others fall. But one question remains unanswered. Harris tilted his head slightly. And that is? The officer leaned forward, his voice echoing across the BU chamber. Why do you not fear us? The silence that followed was thick. Even the guards shifted uneasily, waiting for the answer. Harris glanced at Carter and Vega. Then he stepped forward, his voice calm, steady, carrying weight. You mistake us, he said. It's not that we don't feel fear. We do. Every human does. But we do not let fear decide who we are. The officers frowned, some leaning closer. Harris continued. Back on Earth, survival was never easy. Long before we built ships, before we reached the stars, we fought to live. Ice ages, storms, wild beasts. Our world tried to kill us every day. And when we survived that, we made new dangers ourselves. Wars, famine, weapons that could end everything. We looked into the face of extinction more than once. Carter's voice joined his, soft but sharp. And yet, we are still here, because fear never saved us. Only courage, stubbornness, and the will to adapt kept us alive. The hall was silent. The council listened, though their expressions remained hard. Then Vega stepped forward, grinning faintly. You think your empire is scary? You should have seen rush hour traffic back home, or a hurricane tearing through a city, or standing in a trench when the sky itself is on fire. Trust me, once you've faced all that, a fleet of shiny ships doesn't exactly make you shake in your boots. Some soldiers in the hall murmured, almost laughing at the humans' strange humor. But the officers stayed silent, their glowing eyes fixed on the three. Harris ended it with a single line. You rule with fear, but fear does not work on us, because fear is the one thing we've already mastered. The chamber remained silent for a long time. The officers looked at one another, their faces unreadable. Then the lead officer finally spoke. You are dangerous, he said. More dangerous than any we have faced. For no weapon is sharper than a mind unbroken by fear. Another officer added, almost reluctantly, and that is why you may not be conquered. The words hung in the air like thunder. The commander who had fought beside them stepped forward. Perhaps, he said, his tone slow, careful. They should not be conquered at all, but welcomed. For enemies who cannot be broken may become allies who cannot be defeated. The chamber erupted in voices, some shouting for alliance, others for destruction. The council was split, torn between fear of what humanity could become and the hope of what they might offer. But the humans did not argue. They stood calmly, letting the storm rage around them. Finally, the lead officer struck the table, silencing the chamber. Enough. The decision is made. The humans will not be destroyed. They will remain under observation. But know this, humans of Earth, you walk a thin line. If you betray us, if you rise against us, we will unleash the full power of the Empire. Harris met his gaze without flinching. Then you had better hope you never make us your enemy. The silence that followed was heavy, electric. The council had faced defiance before, but never like this. The humans were escorted out, but whispers followed them. Whispers of fear, whispers of respect, and whispers of something new. Hope. Back in their quarters, Carter sank into a chair, exhaling. That could have gone very badly. It still might, Harris replied. Vega stretched out on the bed, smirking. Yeah, but admit it. We rattled them. For the first time in who knows how long, the Great Empire doesn't know what to do. Harris looked out the viewport at the endless stars. Good. Let them wonder. Let them fear. Because